Welcome to Inside the Creator's Mind, presented by Web Series Canada. This is our very first episode, and my name is Katie Uhlmann. I'll be your host. Today's very first guest is Geoff Lapaire. He is the producer, co-creator, story editor, sound mixer, sound designer, and editor on the award-winning series People Watching. Geoff, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So People Watching has millions of views, thousands of comments, and even looking at the YouTube channel today, there's constantly new comments about people watching it, even though it was made a few years ago now. Why do you think it's resonating with audiences today?
Well, I think it's very sort of timeless in some sense, very relatable. The writer Winston Roundtree really tries to focus on some core theme that's important and some core human truth in his writing. It's a very funny series too, I think. There's a lot of people that laugh and cry in the same episode. At least they say so in the comments. But I think there's something special here. There's a special voice, as I mentioned, with the writing especially. And to this day, there are still new comments. It's even though it's been up for a long time.
And the characters are also unique and sort of new types of juxtapositions within the characters, like Candy, who's a stripper and also a feminist and a super intellectual. Can you talk a little bit about creating these characters and or working with Winston and seeing his process and kind of creating these very complex new types of characters that we don't usually necessarily see?
Yeah, there's a lot of contradictions in some of the characters. As you mentioned, the Candy's especially interesting one. She's a genius, the genius stripper. She's not a stripper because she needs to pay for school or for the money necessarily, but she just likes the occupation. She genuinely likes being naked in front of large groups of people, as she says in the show. And how does she reconcile that with her feminism? And there's more to the character along those lines, but check out the show if you're interested in that. But there's, and one of the other characters is Ted, who's a hardcore feminist, but does like going to strip clubs and does like giant boobs and, but not all the contradictions have to do with stripping in the show. There's more there. Check it out. But yeah, I'd say that there's something really fascinating in the characters, and also the performances really comes through with the cast that we have. We were very careful in selecting the actor voices that work well with the illustrations and the specifics of the character designs visually as well, and then have the voices all work well together as an ensemble cast. So that's something that we were very fortunate to have work out really well in the series.
And there's a lot of themes, reoccurring themes like loneliness, mental illness, judging people based on stereotypes. And there's a darkness and a loneliness to the sadness. I'm not to the show. Not that maybe it's just because it's COVID and I'm living alone, so I'm like, oh, it's resonating with me. But can you speak a little bit to, even though it's this real kind of gritty portrayal of some of the darker moments in life, can you speak a little bit to also the optimism that is also in the show and the importance to you as creators is having that balance?
Yeah, well, we do deal with a lot of heavy subjects in the show. A lot of them are very serious, but there's always hope in the messaging and the way the story's told. In fact, Winston Roundtree came up with a great phrase to summarize the entire series, which is that People Watching is the truth with hope. So there's always an optimistic twist going on at the end. Usually, it's an interesting balance. I've often in the series I produce, I like mixing in the true sadness with comedy, and how do you balance that? How do you strike the right tone in a comedy series when you've got some dark or heavy subjects going on? And I think that's one of the things that I personally like, working on this series. I like to deal with that kind of stuff.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you met Winston Roundtree? He is obviously such an interesting character and a brilliant writer, and just his view of the world is fascinating. So how you got in touch with him, met him, and what it was like kind of in the early days of collaborating with, I'm going to say he's a genius.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I had been aware of the Subnormality series of webcomics, which is also a creation of Winston Roundtree. He's been making this webcomic for 14 years, and I was a big fan, and I didn't know anything about Winston Roundtree. There's not much. If you Google search Winston Roundtree, you can't find much. A very, very secretive creator. And I didn't know if it was a man or a woman or a group of people. Even it could have been an artist collective. So I was poking around one day, and I found out that Winston Roundtree actually lives in Toronto. So I messaged him on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm a producer. I could probably get some money together. Have you ever done animation?" And he said, "No, I've never done animation." And I said, "Well, neither have I. You want to do it? Let's do a show." And yeah, I met with them. We had some sushi, and I said, "Look, we can apply for this web series money and get animators together and make a show." And I said, "I trust you creatively. Come up with whatever you want." And 2 weeks later, he had a proposal for the show People Watching, and it's great. So yeah, it's been fun. He's a very hardworking man as well. In season 1 of the web series, he wrote, directed, and also illustrated absolutely everything. So all of the characters, all the character poses for the animators was all drawn by Winston Roundtree too, which is something else I'm a big fan of, his art style.
I noticed throughout the show a stylistic choice that you made was having the characters often speaking straight to camera, or so it felt that way. And that was something that came up in the very first episode, where everyone was speed dating and they're having conversations with themselves, but there's a heightened sense of intimacy because, as the audience member, I really felt as though the characters were speaking to me directly. Can you speak to the intimacy of the style of the show and that choice in particular?
The animation team has done a really great job of really bringing the characters alive, right? Because oftentimes animation, especially if it's lower budget stuff, can look like a bunch of puppets on the screen, right? And it's doesn't really come across. But with the cast recording and the voice recordings of the characters, our direction is always nothing cartoony, just sort of think of this as a live action show that happens to be animated. We're going for a very realistic tone, and I think that the animators have done an excellent job, and of course with the illustrations of really making it seem like there's a human there, even though it's a couple of lines on a screen, getting the emotion across with the expressions and all that. So it's not the kind of animated show where there's action scenes and cars driving down the street and all that kind of stuff. It's really just humans moving their bodies is where all the work goes. And so really they've tried to make it come across as being very realistic, although it's animated. So maybe that's part of the connection there. And yeah, which is why people identify with Candy, and they identify with Jackson and all the other main characters. They're like, if you read some of the comments, they're talking about, how do I feel so strongly about these cartoon characters more than many people in my real life, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the successes we've had with the series, is to get that feeling across that they're real people, even though it's some lines on a screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a theme of the future, and this idea of that is woven throughout the series, where we have people 50 years from now observing us as we are today, and what that might look like. For you, Geoff, how do you think we're doing? And can you speak a little bit to that theme as well, of time travel or the future in the show?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of sort of universality and core human truths that Winston gets at in his writing, and I think there's a timelessness too that he goes for, right? It's not really a topical thing. It's humans are going to be the same humans in 100 years. And, he's always thinking about, what is our society going to look like 100 years from now, 500 years from now? What does it look like 200 years in the past, thinking about where we are now? So, I think time travel enters into his writing as a theme, as just another way to look at us from outside of our current lens of experience in the 21st century. So yeah, I think that's an interesting way to sort of bake in a litmus test for how timeless your art might be, is to think about what it's going to look like 200 years from now.
Great. And this series has won quite a few awards. It's done very well. A winner at Banff and the Canadian Screen Awards. What has it been like for you over the last few years, having a show that's been so popular with audiences and also so well received on the festival and award circuit?
Well, yeah, it's nice to get that recognition. And there's a lot of industry people that have written us saying, this is the kind of stuff we should be producing in Canada, and a lot of comments about, why isn't this on TV? So I'll chalk that up to a success, because, it's nice. It'd be nice if, we can continue making more of this stuff. And it certainly helps, getting the awards. And, we just want to work. We just want to make great stuff that people enjoy watching and entertain. And especially Winston Roundtree, right? He's a true artist. He's not, he's in it. He's in this business for the right reasons, let's say.
And where is the best place for us to find out more information on People Watching and on your other work as well online?
Oh, check out peoplewatching.ca. We'll direct you to the playlist for all 20 episodes of the web series that we've created so far. And, you can like us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page where we'll put all the updates about what's going on with People Watching and our other projects.
Thank you so much, Geoff, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for our very first episode of Inside the Creator's Mind, presented by Web Series Canada. Please like, subscribe, comment below. I'm Katie Uhlmann, and we hope to see you next time.